No one remembers the moment a story truly begins. But the galaxy remembered this one. The alien woman lay broken in the ash dunes of Karen 9, her breath shallow, her blood glowing faintly blue against the black sand. Her people had taught her many things: how to read star currents, how to bend light into language, how to survive vacuum storms. But above all, they taught her this single truth. If you see a human, close your eyes. Death comes faster that way. So when the shadow fell across her burning vision, she did exactly that. She shut her eyes and waited to die. The human stopped walking. Caleb Rourke had crossed half the dead continent chasing a signal that should not exist. A broken distress ping.
Non standard.
Alien. And old. The kind of thing every sane scavenger ignored. But humans were rarely sane. He crouched slowly, rifle lowered, helmet visor fogging from the heat. The being in front of him was not like the invasion vids. Not armored. Not towering. Just small. Injured. Shaking. She looked fragile. And afraid. Her long limbs were folded inward, defensive even in unconsciousness. One side of her torso was torn open by plasma burn, edges crystallized. Alien blood pulsed weakly, reacting to the air. Every scan on Caleb's wrist screamed the same warning. Species. Unknown. Threat level. Unclassified. Medical status. Critical. She whispered something under her breath. A prayer. Or a farewell. Caleb exhaled. Well, he muttered, this day just got complicated. The alien flinched when his shadow shifted. Her eyes opened for a fraction of a second, wide, luminous, filled with absolute terror. She saw him clearly now. A human. Tall. Armored. Scarred helmet. Weapon at his side. Her pupils contracted. This was it. Her people said humans enjoyed the moment before killing. That they watched fear like art. That they learned enemies by breaking them. She braced for pain. Instead, the human knelt. Caleb removed his helmet. Hot air rushed across his face. Sweat. Dust. A 3-day beard. Very human imperfections. Easy, he said softly, hands open, slow. I'm not going to hurt you. The alien froze. Her translator implant struggled, then sparked weakly to life. Not hurt? That made no sense. Humans did not say that. Caleb reached into his pack, pulling out a compact med unit. Old model. Repaired more times than he remembered. He activated it carefully, projecting a soft white field over her wound. The alien hissed, instinct screaming at her to crawl away. But her body refused. She was too weak. Yeah, I know, Caleb said gently. Hurts like hell. But it'll seal the burn. The field stabilized her bleeding. Her mind reeled. He was helping. Why? Every story said humans took prisoners for experiments. For labor. For sport. She searched his face for cruelty. Found only focus. And concern. Why? Her voice cracked, thin as starlight. Why not kill me? Caleb paused. He hadn't expected that question. Because, he said after a moment, you're hurt. And I don't kill people just for existing. The alien stared. That single sentence shattered centuries of belief. Her species, the Lirati, had voted unanimously to classify humans as apex predators beyond diplomacy. Unstable. Violent. Too creative. Too dangerous. And yet here one was, kneeling in the dust, choosing mercy without hesitation. You lie, she whispered. Caleb smiled faintly. I get that a lot. He worked quickly, sealing the wound, injecting stabilizers adapted on the fly. Human medicine was messy. Improvised. Brutally effective. The alien gasped as pain faded into numb warmth. Her systems stabilized. She was still alive. Caleb leaned back, sitting in the sand. There. You're not dying today. Her breathing slowed. Confusion replaced fear. My name, she said carefully, is Celine. Caleb, he replied. Just a guy who followed the wrong signal. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the whispering wind. High above, unseen by both, a surveillance drone adjusted its orbit. The galaxy was watching. And it had just witnessed something impossible. A human had spared an enemy. That single act would ripple outward, through star councils, war fleets, and ancient doctrines built on fear. But for now, in the dust of a forgotten world, two strangers sat together. One expected death. The other chose something far more dangerous. Compassion. Esailin's eyes stayed locked on Caleb like he was a puzzle with teeth. The numb warmth in her side made no sense. Lirati biology didn't respond to foreign medicine. At least, that's what her instructors swore. Human chemicals should have shocked her system into collapse. Yet she could breathe. She could think. And the human was still here, not gloating, not threatening, not trying to bind her wrists. He was checking his scanner, glancing toward the horizon, listening to the wind like it carried secrets. Caleb stood and offered his hand. Philin stared at it as if it were a trap. Up, he said. We need to move. Move, where? She asked, voice unsteady. Somewhere we're not a glowing beacon in an open desert, he replied. Trust me. Anyone with eyes can spot your blood trail. Her ears twitched slightly. You assume someone is hunting me. Caleb looked at her, then at the distant dunes. I don't assume. You bet. Celine forced herself to accept his hand. His grip was firm, warm, rough. Not delicate. Not ceremonial. Real. She rose slowly, pain flaring beneath the numb layer. Caleb steadied her without hesitation, then shifted her weight like he'd carried injured people before. That should have frightened her. Instead, it was strangely grounding. They moved toward the ruins half buried in the sand, jagged remnants of old research stations from the first human wave that tried to settle Karen 9 and failed. Metal ribs stuck out like the bones of a dead beast. Caleb led her into a cracked service tunnel and stopped near a collapsed doorway. This'll do, he whispered. Ellen lowered herself against the wall, breathing shallow. The air inside was cooler and smelled of rust, dust, and old power cells. Caleb pulled a small lantern from his pack and covered it with a thin cloth so it only glowed faintly. Why hide the light? Celine asked. Caleb's eyes flicked upward. Because light carries. And because. A faint buzzing rolled across the desert outside, like an insect made of metal. Caleb froze. Celine froze harder. Her heart hammered. She knew that sound. Drone, she whispered. Lirati scout class. Caleb's jaw tightened. So your people are looking for you? No, she said quickly, panic sharpening her words. Not my people. Caleb's gaze sharpened. Then who? Celine swallowed. The Vekthar. The name landed like a stone. Even humans knew the Vekthar, an empire with cold discipline and a simple policy for anything that resisted: erase it. They'd been pushing closer to human space for years, testing borders, hijacking signals, disappearing colonies. Caleb breathed out slowly. That's bad. It is worse, Celine whispered. They hunt my kind for navigation implants. Lirati minds map subspace differently. They use us like living compasses. Caleb's fists clenched. Celine watched him carefully. She expected rage in a human to be violent and wild. But Caleb's anger was quiet. Controlled. Dangerous in a different way. The buzzing grew louder. Caleb leaned toward a crack in the wall and peeked outside. A small, sleek drone hovered above the sand, triangular, black, its underside scanning in narrow beams. It paused. Then drifted closer toward the ruins. Celine felt her throat tighten. If the drone detected her biosignature, it would send coordinates to a strike team. Vekthar wouldn't come with questions. They'd come with fire. Caleb's eyes moved rapidly. He looked at the cracked ceiling panels, the exposed wiring, the broken emergency conduit. Then he looked down at Celine. Can you move? He asked. She nodded, though she wasn't sure. Good, he said. Because we're about to do something stupid. Celine blinked. Stupid. Caleb gave a thin smile. Human specialty. He pulled out the med unit again, then rummaged for a small roll of reflective insulation tape and a half-broken battery pack. Celine watched, confused, as he began wrapping the battery pack in the reflective tape. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Making bait," Caleb replied. "If it's scanning for heat and biosigns, we can confuse it." Saelin's ears tilted. "But it scans on multiple spectra." "Yeah," Caleb said, fingers moving fast. "Which is why humans don't fight tech with tech. We fight it with lies." The drone's scanning beam swept over the ruins again. Caleb pressed the battery pack against the medunit's power port and twisted 2 wires together. Sparks popped. Saelin flinched. Caleb didn't. The makeshift device hummed. Then it pulsed a soft warmth. Celine realized what he was doing. He was creating a fake body signature. He wasn't just improvising. He was thinking like a predator. Not the predator her people feared. A different kind. One that outsmarted. Caleb pointed toward a dark corridor leading deeper into the ruin. "You go that way," he said. "Slow. Quiet. Stay low." Saelin's eyes widened. "And you?" "I'll take the drone for a walk," he whispered. She grabbed his sleeve. "No. It will alert the Vecthar." "Not if it never gets the chance," Caleb said. He peeled her hand off gently, then held up the fake signature device. "Ever seen a human throw?" he asked. Celine blinked, confused by the question. Caleb grinned briefly. "Then you're about to." He crouched near a gap in the wall, waited until the drone hovered in the right position, then hurled the device hard into the dunes, far out, away from the ruins. It landed with a dull thud. The drone sensors snapped toward it immediately. The scanning beam focused. The drone adjusted altitude. Then it followed. Saelin's breath caught. It worked. The drone drifted after the decoy, sweeping it with long beams like a curious predator. Caleb moved without wasting a second. He slipped out through the same gap, low and fast, running along the shadow of the ruins toward a broken tower structure half buried in sand. Ian forced herself to crawl deeper into the corridor, heart pounding, ears straining to catch every sound. Outside, the drone buzzed, circling the decoy device. Then it emitted a short ping, like a confirmation. Saelin's blood ran cold. That ping meant it was about to transmit. Caleb reached the broken tower and climbed it with terrifying speed, using rusted beams like ladder rungs. He tore open a panel and exposed an old satellite dish cable, dead, but still connected to a grounding rod. He yanked 2 wires loose, stripped them with his teeth, and jammed them into a cracked capacitor bank in the tower wall. Celine couldn't see his face, but she could imagine his focus. Then he pulled a tiny metal cylinder from his pocket. A signal jammer. Homemade. Probably illegal. Definitely human. He clicked it on. A faint crackle filled the air. The drone's buzzing changed. Its flight stuttered for half a second like it had hit invisible resistance. Caleb didn't stop. He angled the grounding wires outward, held them like a fork, and waited until the drone drifted near the tower again, still curious about the decoy. Saelin's mouth went dry. Humans didn't just survive with technology. They survived by abusing it. The drone floated closer. Closer. Caleb leaned forward, timing everything. Then he slammed the stripped wires together against the capacitor bank. A bright arc of electricity snapped outward like a lightning whip. The drone jerked mid-air. Its lights flared. It convulsed, buzzing wildly, then dropped like a dead bird into the sand, smoking. Silence. Celine stared, stunned. A scout drone built with advanced Vecthar alloys, disabled by a human using rust, broken wiring, and a dead tower that should not have functioned. Caleb slid down the tower, coughing, shaking his hand from the shock. He sprinted back to the ruins and slipped inside. Celine was still sitting in the corridor, frozen like her mind had stalled. Caleb knelt beside her. "Okay," he whispered. "We have a bigger problem now." Saelin's voice barely worked. "Bigger." Caleb nodded, pointing toward the smoking wreck outside. They'll notice the drone went offline. Saelin's stomach sank. They'll come, she whispered. Caleb's eyes were steady. Yeah. Then he leaned closer and spoke the sentence that changed everything for her. But they're coming to the wrong place. He pulled out his scanner. The screen flickered with faint signals, old tunnels, buried pathways, emergency conduits. Caleb tapped one line. There's an underground transit line beneath this ruin, he said. Collapsed entrances, but not all of them. Saelin's ears lifted. You know this place. Caleb's expression turned grim. I grew up running from people with better weapons, he said softly. You learn every hole the world gives you. Saelin swallowed. Humans weren't just violent. They were adaptable. And that adaptability, born from hardship, was terrifying in the most inspiring way. Caleb offered his hand again. Can you walk? He asked. Saelin nodded, forcing herself up. Caleb supported her as they moved into the deeper tunnel, leaving the surface behind. Behind them, the desert wind carried smoke into the broken sky. And far away, somewhere beyond the dunes, a Vecthar command node received an alert. Scout Drone Unit 7, offline. Last known scan, Human Ruin Sector 12. The hunt had begun. And the galaxy, unknowing, watching through distant relays, was about to learn something the Vecthar never understood. Humans didn't need superior weapons. They just needed one chance. And a brain full of stubborn hope. The tunnel swallowed them. Caleb sealed the rusted hatch behind them, twisting the manual lock until it screamed in protest. The sound echoed down the underground passage, then faded into a deep, heavy silence. Only their breathing remained. The transit tunnel was older than the war, older than the first failed colonies. Its walls were thick, curved, and lined with dead light strips that hadn't glowed in decades. Dust drifted with every step, floating like tiny ghosts in Caleb's lantern glow. Saelin leaned heavily on him now. The pain was returning in dull waves, but she refused to slow them down. Every instinct told her the Vecthar would not stop at one drone. They never did. Caleb checked his scanner again. The signal was weak, but steady. This line runs for miles, he murmured. If it hasn't collapsed all the way, we can disappear. Disappear. The word felt strange to Saelin. Her people did not disappear. They were found. Captured. Used. She glanced at Caleb's face, lit from below by the lantern. Calm. Focused. Alert in a way that reminded her of a hunting animal, not reckless, but patient. You planned this, she said quietly. Caleb shook his head. No. I adapted. She considered that. Then nodded. That may be worse. A faint vibration rippled through the tunnel floor. Caleb froze. Saelin felt it too. Her ears flattened. Walkers, she whispered. Light units. 2, maybe 3. Caleb exhaled slowly. Figures. The Vecthar didn't chase blindly. They learned. They adjusted. Caleb lowered the lantern and moved them off the main path, guiding Saelin into a narrow maintenance alcove half hidden behind a fallen panel. He shut off the light completely. Darkness wrapped around them. The vibration grew stronger, rhythmic, precise. Metal feet against stone. The sound of machines that never tired. Saelin's pulse hammered. If they were found here, there would be no escape. The tunnel walls were too thick to break. Too old to collapse easily. She leaned closer to Caleb without thinking. His hand tightened around hers. The walkers passed overhead, their sensors humming, red light beams slicing through the tunnel ahead. One paused briefly. Saelin stopped breathing. The beam swept closer. Then it moved on. The vibration faded. Only when the sound was gone did Caleb let out a breath. That, he whispered, was way too close. Saelin nodded, her voice shaking. They will return. In greater numbers. Caleb turned to her. Then it's time you tell me why they're really hunting you. She hesitated. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant drip of water and the soft hum of the scanner. Finally, she spoke. I was not fleeing an accident, Esselin said. I was fleeing a decision. Caleb raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. My people serve as navigators across unstable space, she continued. We sense paths others cannot. The Vekthar wanted more than guidance. They wanted control. She swallowed. They created a device. A network. One that could copy our neural mapping and transmit it instantly. Caleb's expression sharpened. Let me guess. It didn't work. It worked too well, she said. Once activated, it would remove the need for living navigators. Entire fleets could move through dangerous space without loss. That sounds useful, Caleb said carefully. Esselin's eyes darkened. It would also allow the Vekthar to bypass every natural barrier protecting independent worlds. Refuge systems. Hidden colonies. Even your own. Caleb went very still. They would move faster than any defense could respond, she said. War would become effortless. Caleb stared into the dark. And you stopped it. I destroyed the core, Esselin said softly. But not before copying the data. Caleb looked at her sharply. You have it. She nodded once. Silence pressed down between them. You realize, Caleb said slowly, that makes you the most wanted being in this sector. Esselin's lips curved into a tired, bitter smile. I realized that when my ship exploded. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. Okay. That's not great. Another vibration trembled through the tunnel, farther away this time, but heavier. Caleb checked the scanner. More contacts. Many more. They're sealing exits, he muttered. Smart. Esselin's voice dropped. You should leave me. Caleb looked at her. Excuse me. They will burn this world to get the data, she said. Your people live nearby. Settlements. Outposts. If they trace it to you. Caleb shook his head. No. You don't understand, she insisted. You are human. You can escape. Blend in. I cannot. Caleb leaned closer until their foreheads nearly touched. No, he repeated, firmer. You don't understand. He tapped his chest lightly. Once humans decide something's wrong, we don't walk away. We build something stupid and impossible and dare the universe to stop us. Esselin stared at him. Caleb pulled out a small data shard and slid it between his fingers. You said the network copied neural mapping. Yes. And that mapping lets ships move where they shouldn't. Yes. Caleb's eyes gleamed faintly in the dark. Then what if, he said slowly, we don't use it for war? Esselin frowned. What else would it be used for? Caleb smiled. Warning systems. Evac routes. Emergency jumps. A map of every place space tries to kill you. Esselin's breath caught. That knowledge, she whispered, would change everything. Exactly, Caleb said. Which is why the Vekthar want it buried, or owned. Another tremor shook dust from the ceiling. Caleb stood. Time's up. He scanned the tunnel walls until he found a maintenance junction marked with faded human symbols. This line connects to an old relay node, he said. Dead. Supposed to be. Esselin frowned. Supposed to be. Caleb grinned. Human infrastructure has a habit of not staying dead. He pried open the panel, exposing a mess of cables and ancient ports. Esselin watched as he connected his scanner, his jammer, and 3 incompatible power cells together. This will overload the relay, he said. Send a burst signal. To whom? Esselin asked. Caleb didn't hesitate. Everyone. He activated the device. The tunnel lights flickered. Far above, long silent satellites stirred. A signal shot outward, raw, unencrypted, impossible to ignore. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message. A warning. And attached to it was proof. The first fragment of Esselin's data. Across nearby systems, sensors blinked. Relays woke. Old human networks lit up like embers reigniting. Somewhere in deep space, a human patrol ship paused. Somewhere else, an independent alien council froze mid-session. And deep within Vecthar command space, alarms began to scream. Caleb shut the device down and smiled grimly. "Congratulations," he said. "You just went public." Celine stared at him, awe and fear twisting together. "You've started something," she whispered. Caleb helped her stand. "Yeah," he said. "And now they can't erase it." The tunnel shook harder now. The Vecthar were close. But for the first time since she'd crashed, Celine felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not fragile. Not quiet. But loud enough to reach the stars. The tunnel shook like something massive had slammed its fist into the planet. Dust rained down. Ancient metal groaned. Somewhere behind them, stone collapsed with a thunderous crack. "They're breaching," Celine whispered. Caleb didn't slow. He half-carried her now, boots splashing through shallow water as they pushed deeper into the forgotten arteries beneath Karen 9. His scanner screamed warnings he didn't bother reading. He could feel it in his bones. The Vecthar were done being careful. A pulse of energy rippled through the tunnel, washing over them like a cold wave. Celine cried out, clutching her head. "Disrupt a sweep," she gasped. "They're trying to knock out implants." Caleb grimaced. "Figures." He yanked a small foil-lined pouch from his pack and shoved it against her chest. "Hold this." "What is it?" she asked, disoriented. "Emergency EMP dampener," he said. "Don't ask. Human junk draw a miracle." The next pulse hit harder. Lights burst overhead. Panels exploded. The tunnel ahead glowed red-hot as a cutting beam burned through stone. Caleb swore. "We're out of time." He spotted the relay chamber up ahead, a wide, circular room filled with rusted pylons and a dead holotable in the center. Thick cables ran upward, vanishing into the rock like roots. Caleb dragged Celine inside and slammed the door control. Sparks flew. The mechanism locked halfway. "Good enough," he muttered. The room vibrated as Vecthar weapons chewed through the tunnel behind them. Celine leaned against a pylon, breathing hard. "They will overwhelm us." Caleb nodded. "Yeah." Then he smiled. "But here's the thing." He crossed the room and slapped his palm against the holotable. It flickered weakly, then died. Celine stared. "That system is obsolete." "Exactly," Caleb said. "Which means nobody bothered to lock it down." He ripped open a floor panel, exposing a thick data spine. He jammed Esailin's data shard into an adapter, then plugged it straight into the relay core. The entire chamber hummed. "What are you doing?" Celine demanded, fear creeping back into her voice. "Finishing what you started," Caleb replied. "At human scale." The holotable flared to life, dim, unstable, but active. Star maps bloomed into the air. Paths appeared that no human chart had ever shown. Impossible route. Dead zones turned into highways. Safe passages through space storms. Celine stared in horror and wonder. "You can't just broadcast this." Caleb's fingers flew over the interface. Too late. The first Vecthar blast tore through the tunnel entrance, molten stone spraying into the chamber. Dark figures moved in the smoke, tall, armored, eyes glowing with cold purpose. Caleb didn't look back. He hit send. The relay screamed as it dumped the data into every open channel it could reach. Civilian bands. Emergency frequencies. Forgotten human networks no one had used in decades. It wasn't clean. It wasn't controlled. It was human. Across the sector, ships lurched as new data flooded their systems. Human freighters rerouted instinctively, escaping ambush zones they'd never known were traps. Independent colonies received evacuation paths just as Vecthar fleets moved to cut them off. Old human defense platforms, written off as scrap, reactivated, suddenly able to see routes the enemy thought impossible. The Vecthar soldiers froze for a split second as their command feeds filled with errors. "What have you done?" Esailin whispered. Caleb turned to face the advancing enemy. "I gave everyone a map," he said. "And humans are really good at using maps to start fights." The first Vecthar fired. Caleb grabbed Celine and Dove as plasma scorched the air where they'd stood. He rolled, came up firing his rifle, not to kill, but to collapse a support beam. The ceiling came down in a roar, blocking half the chamber. "Move!" he shouted. They sprinted toward an emergency lift at the far end. Caleb smashed the control panel with his rifle butt. The doors creaked open like they hadn't been used in a lifetime. Inside, the lift shook violently as it began to rise. Below them, Vecthar soldiers regrouped, firing upward, but debris and falling stones slowed them. Celine clutched the lift rail. They will still win. They have fleets. Caleb wiped blood from his eyebrow, grinning despite the pain. "You ever notice something about humans?" She shook her head. "We don't like bullies," he said. "And we really don't like it when someone tells us where we can't go." The lift burst through the surface in a spray of dust and shattered metal. Above them, the sky burned. Human ships were arriving. Not sleek warships. Not pristine fleets. They were everything else. Mining rigs retrofitted with guns. Cargo haulers bristling with jury-rigged weapons. Old patrol ships flying patched hulls and mismatched insignias. They came through impossible routes only Saelin's data made visible. Vecthar fleets hesitated, formations breaking as humans appeared where no ships should exist. The sky filled with chaos. Celine stared, stunned. They answered. Caleb stepped out of the lift, helping her into the open air. "Told you. Once humans hear someone's being hunted unfairly, they get involved." A Vecthar command ship broke through the clouds, weapons charging. Before it could fire, a human vessel rammed it from an impossible angle, tearing through its shields. The explosion lit the sky. Celine felt tears burn her eyes. Not from fear. From understanding. Her people had believed humans were dangerous because they were violent. They were wrong. Humans were dangerous because they shared. Because once they decided knowledge belonged to everyone, no empire could put it back in a cage. Caleb looked at the battle unfolding, then down at Celine. "They're not fighting for territory," he said. "They're fighting for the right to choose." The ground shook again, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was the sound of the galaxy changing its mind. The battle did not end with a single explosion. It ended with confusion. Vecthar command ships tried to reorganize, but the maps they trusted betrayed them. Routes they believed were secure suddenly bled human vessels into their flanks. Retreat corridors folded into dead zones. Safe jump points became traps. For the first time in recorded history, the Vecthar were reacting instead of controlling. Celine watched the sky from the ridge above the ruins, her breath catching as human ships danced through impossible paths. They didn't move like fleets. They moved like ideas. Each vessel adapted on the fly, sharing data, correcting mistakes, learning in real time. Where one ship failed, another improved. Caleb stood beside her, rifle slung loosely, eyes scanning the horizon out of habit more than fear. "They shouldn't be able to do that," Celine whispered. Caleb shrugged. "We build things expecting them to break. So when they do, we're ready." A Vecthar cruiser attempted to flee, engines flaring. The ship jumped, only to reappear moments later inside a gravitational shear, its hull tearing apart. Celine closed her eyes. Not in fear. In relief. The hunt was over. Vecthar forces scattered, retreating through unstable space they no longer understood. Some ships vanished entirely. Others limped away, broadcasting frantic warnings. For the first time, the message flowed outward from them. Do not pursue humans. Do not corner humans. Do not underestimate humans. The sky slowly quieted. Human ships did not chase. They held position. They protected exits. They guarded colonies that were never theirs. Celine turned to Caleb. "You could have used the data to dominate. To rule." Caleb snorted softly. "That sounds exhausting." She studied his face. Scarred. Tired. Ordinary. Extraordinary. "What will your people do now?" she asked. Caleb looked around at the gathered human ships, at the mixed signals pouring in, alien voices, human accents, fear, gratitude. We'll argue, he said. A lot. Then we'll build safeguards. Share the roots. Probably mess it up a few times. He smiled. But nobody gets to own the stars anymore. Lynn felt something inside her settle. For her entire life, space had been something to fear. Something guarded by rules and empires. Humans saw it differently. They saw it as a problem to solve together. A human shuttle descended nearby. Medical lights flickered. Armed escorts fanned out, but not toward her. They faced outward. Protective. A human officer approached, saluting Caleb casually. You the one who lit up half the sector? Caleb sighed. In my defense, it started as a quiet day. The officer's gaze shifted to Lynn. There was curiosity there. Caution. But no hatred. Alien? He asked. Lynn stiffened. Caleb stepped forward. Navigator. Survivor. And the reason half your maps just got rewritten. The officer nodded slowly. Then she's under our protection. The words hit Lynn harder than any weapon. Protection. Not captivity. Not exploitation. She turned to Caleb as medics approached. What happens to me? Caleb met her eyes. That's your call. She thought of her people, hunted, hidden, cautious. She thought of the Vecthar, confident, cruel, certain the universe belonged to them. And she thought of humans, flawed, loud, stubborn, and willing to stand between a victim and an empire. I will testify, she said firmly. I will share what I know. I will help build safeguards. Caleb nodded. Galaxy could use more of that. As Lynn was guided toward the shuttle, she looked back at the battlefield, now quiet, stars steady once more. She remembered the moment she'd first seen Caleb. The moment she closed her eyes, expecting death. She had been wrong. The galaxy had been wrong. Humans were not monsters. They were something far more dangerous to tyrants. They were helpers. They were builders. They were the kind of species that, once they decided something mattered, refused to let it be destroyed, no matter how big the threat. High above, signals continued to spread, new alliances forming, old doctrines cracking. And across the stars, a new truth began to take hold. If you ever find yourself injured, hunted, and alone, and a human finds you first, don't close your eyes. They might just change everything.